For the past 35 years, I've been the CEO and president of the Housing Assistance Corporation. The Housing Assistance Corporation, which we call HAC, is a regional nonprofit affordable housing organization located in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And we serve the three-county area, Barnstable, which is Cape Cod, Marshall County that is, Dukes and Nantucket, which are the two islands off of the Cape. Our mission is to see that everyone in our region has a decent and safe and secure place to live. How can we as a responsible organization be around 35 years and not try to make a difference where we can really improve the lives of society as a whole, not just the individual we serve? I don't think a person of conscience, intelligence, and caring can do that. So, Community Green is trying to achieve three things: decent, affordable housing, which is obvious, a sense of community and trust. That is, you can feel safe in being there. You can have some common values with the people who are there. A community where there is job training and jobs, sometimes sheltered jobs for those who need a little help getting to work every day and taking all those responsibilities to heart without going over the edge, and where values of conservation will be taught. Some people would say, you know, you've been working on it so long, I don't think it's ever going to happen. You guys are just wasting your time. We may be wasting some time. We may not be doing it efficiently, but we're going to do it. And we want to do it because we think it's important. And we may succeed and we may fail. You know, when you're trying something new, when you're trying to find a cure for AIDS or cancer, you know, you're not sure you're going to succeed. But that doesn't minimize the importance of doing the research to find a cure for a difficult malady. And this certainly is a malady in our society, and we want to find a partial cure for it and do our part. The Noah Shelter is the only shelter on Cape Cod for individuals, both men and women. It was opened in 1986 after spending 2 years at the Hyannis Armory. We did it in response to a community need and to the town of Barnstable asking us actually if we would do this. And so it's been opened for those almost 25 years to 365 days of the year providing this service. It provides breakfast and dinner. It has a day program that helps people get jobs and links people up with other services as well. What the goal of the facility is to keep people safe, both in terms of the elements, the weather, and in terms of the kinds of crazy things that go out on the street when you have no real place to live. And so the hope is they can come here and begin to get that first little step up to get on with their lives. It's limited what you can do working out of a homeless shelter. Obviously, the stereotype of people in homeless shelters is a powerful one in our society. It's hard when you don't have a regular home. It's hard to have a family. It's hard to have a regular job. So that it's a very limited solution to a problem. But it has been a meaningful one. No one has died at the Noah Shelter in all of those years, which may not sound like much, but it's really an accomplishment because a lot of the people here are quite sick when they come here. They sometimes have alcohol and drug problems, sometimes have mental health issues as well, and so there's a whole caretaking element to what we're doing here to keep this densely populated facility safe. The shelter is located almost in downtown Hyannis, which is both good and bad. It's good because it's close to services. It's very easy for people to get here. It's very central in terms of police and rescue and so forth, which are used here fairly frequently. But it's bad in the sense that it impacts downtown Hyannis in some ways more than we'd like. But it is what it is, and it's a very successful and useful facility. It isn't an ideal solution to the problem that we're talking about solving, but it has had a useful life, and I think it's important in the life of the community. The limitations of this kind of facility are as what you'd expect. I mean, in most of our lives, our home is a key place for us to launch our lives. You know, we get home at night, we lock the door, and we begin to regenerate for the next day. And we do some positive things, we do some things to relax, we have family activities, kids do homework, and so forth. Almost none of that can happen here because people, for one thing, don't have a guaranteed bed here at night. They have to come each day for the most part and see if they can stay here. And then they don't have privacy. They don't have a place to, for the most part, to leave their things. Now, there are exceptions with incentive programs to all of these things, but by and large, this is not a safe and secure place to call home. It's a bed at night, it's a shower, it's a meal, but the rest of it is up to you. And so if you picture organizing your life where you don't have any permanent place to organize it from, and I organize my life in the evening at home and during the day in my office and where I work. That's where it is. They don't have either one of those two things. And so we try to provide a step to permanent housing. The original reason we did this was to get people, have people safe, but also to get them into permanent housing, to have them sort of captured as clients of ours to help get into permanent housing. So it's very limited in the sense that the permanent housing is what you depend on to move on with your lives, and this is just an intermediate step that is not always successful. We have learned from running the Noah shelter for all of these years a lot about what works for people and what doesn't. And of course we understand that people who come to a homeless shelter like this are at a point where they have limited ability to put their lives together. And you know, we all know how difficult it is to get your life together and to keep it together for your entire adult existence. You know, people get divorced and people lose jobs and people have health problems and people have money problems and people have all kinds of problems. And so people are at the bottom that come here. And so the limitation is that we can't really help them put the whole package together because this is not a normal, healthy way to exist. So the path to a more comprehensive way is a housing development where there is community, jobs, and sort of forbearance. Not everybody can jump into a 40-hour-a-week stressful job and then run home at night and be fresh as a daisy taking care of your family and just pay all those bills and put 10% in the savings account, you know, and go to church on Sunday and, you know, to keep their car registered. Not all of us can do all of that immediately. And so what you have to do is to get people gradually working up to a level of subsistence where they can manage all that complexity. And we all know how crazy it is now with all the messages we get about how we should live our lives, how we should spend our money, where we should vacation, you know, what we should look like, what we should wear, what we should drive, the pets we should have. You know, that's not realistic. That's building a complex, almost impossible to manage lifestyle. The people here can't do that yet, as many people can't quite do. And so we try to get them to a point where they can get a job, and maybe they can't get there at 9 o'clock every morning, but you work with them and make that a gradual transition. They take on responsibility gradually rather than all at once and build up the confidence that they've never had before. Many of them didn't build up confidence in childhood. They didn't have the encouragement, the support. They didn't necessarily do well in school. They may have had alcoholic parents. They may have had no parents. And so it's quite a step for a lot of people to leap to that successful first rung of the ladder that we all say is essential to survive in our society. We're in the main men's dormitory at the Noah shelter, and there are a couple of dormitory rooms, but this gives you an idea of how close the beds are and how little privacy people have in a situation like this. This building accommodates, as I've said, 60 people a night, and so it's a pretty cramped effort overall. Obviously, people need more privacy and more space they can call their own. I think the move from the next step up from a facility like this is a transitional housing model where you have, you know, a couple of people in a room, as we do in the women's portion of this facility. This works to keep people safe and warm, and obviously everyone appreciates a bed at night, but it makes it very difficult for people when they're ill, for when they've got some serious acute personal problems, and it's very difficult for them to sort of move on with employment and education and those kinds of things when having to deal with this very temporary and a sort of ethereal way of living. You know, I think we're happy that people are safe and have a warm place and a blanket over them every night. We're unhappy that people don't have the stability that we all need in our lives to begin to undo the bad things that have happened to them in the past. Well, we're in the kitchen at the Noah shelter, and the Noah shelter accommodates 60 people a night. And so we serve a lot of meals, both dinner and breakfast for 60 people or sometimes more, 365 days of the year. The staff also feeds people throughout the night, and that is people will drop by from the streets and get something to eat during the night. And I think it's one of the times I've been here when I've seen that, it's a very nice kind of thing. And people can come here and come in and say hello and sit down and get warm for a few minutes if they're not staying here, and get something to eat and go on with whatever is happening to them. But you know, this kitchen is a very busy place. You can see that it looks like it's used, and it certainly is. There's been a very long-term community effort to support this facility in the larger community. There's some opposition to the facility too within the Hyannis community, because the Hyannis community is uncomfortable with its relationship with homeless individuals particularly. But overall, we get a lot of community support, and there's a lot of caring and concern for the people who are here. I think it's fair to say that society today is confusing. It's polarized. People are on one side or the other of an issue, or anywhere in between. And there's so much news coverage of crime and other kinds of things that make people afraid. Fear is the enemy of good mental health. We all know that. And so a community is a place where you have something in common, the word community, with the others around you, and feel trusting and safe in that environment. So we think that when we do housing developments, we need to create a trusting environment where people can feel safe with their neighbors and have something in common with their neighbors. And you know, it's not an exact science how to achieve that, but we don't want to build neighborhoods the way they've been, where you hardly know the name of your neighbor, where it's all about security. We want to create places where people can live as if they are, you know, safe and secure in their homes, and can depend on their neighbors and friends nearby to support them in times of need. And so in a facility like this, some of that takes place because it's a very intense community, but it's also very authoritarian in the way the staff has to govern 60 people in a small place. In a place like Community Green, where there will be a campus and a program and people participating in running the place, and some common purposes, we're going to try to create a community there where people know each other and are glad they're there. We're at what used to be called the Summerside Center, and is now called Safe Harbor. And originally this was our first major foray into family sheltering. There are 20 units here. Each family lives in a small room with a bathroom. And then if you're looking straight down the end, there's a community building where there's a big dining room, a commercial kitchen, offices, meeting rooms, and so forth, where people go for common activities. There's a laundromat here as well. And so you have 20 mothers here with one or more children who, again, are in transition to permanent housing. And so our goal when we opened this in the 80s, about 1985, as the Summerside Center, was to help people get secure and go on with their lives as families, and have a safe place for kids to come and play and interact with other kids and go to school and so forth. And we had, I think, at the time, about 50 different educational programs here. We had a regular curriculum of courses people would take, and not all of the courses were, you know, budgeting and how to get affordable housing, though there was a lot of sort of practical stuff. There were courses in a lot of sort of semi-vocational activities and even hobby activities to help people develop successes in little areas of their lives. And so if you have somebody coming out of a huge crisis in their life, you know, maybe not getting along with their parents and a young mother and so forth, learning how to knit or those kinds of things begins to build the sort of merit badges of life in terms of building on those skills and moving into other things. And it's been a very successful facility over the years. Eventually we leased it to another organization, and the women here now are formerly battered women, and they come here as a safe place to be. But a lot of the same things go on here as when we ran it. And it's a five or six building complex, and there's a separate children's center that I think you can't really see from here that has provided a lot of sort of variety in people's lives and so forth, and a little campus. So it too has been a valuable experience in leading toward the Community Green model, where there is a campus, where there are fairly a lot of people in one small area, where people learn to live in a community and support each other, where people learn from each other in terms of behaviors, best life practices and so forth, exchange ideas about how to go on with their lives, exchange success stories, exchange some of the misery they've had and some of the bad experiences in many cases with men, or difficulties in school and so forth. And so that shared peer group learning was something that we learned about here, and we've moved on to do it in other ways in other places. We're at Southside Village, a 4-building complex that we built in the year 2000, what I call the modern era of hack development. And the 14 units is a cozy little 4-building community on a relatively small lot on the outskirts of Hyannis. And they're all family rental units, although 2 of them are set aside for clients of the Department of Mental Retardation. So you have a mix of people and purposes here. The people here are typical people in need of affordable housing that are working families. It's a very neat little compact community. And we use, I remember, about 9 funding sources. We cobbled together all kinds of funding sources to do this as our first modern era foray into development. It's been a very successful little development. We manage it ourselves, and it's been very neat. And if you look around, it's very attractive and appealing, and it's well accepted and even loved by the community. One of the things that happened during the 1980s were the major housing programs in the state and in the country were pretty much eliminated. And what happened was, in replacing those, there were small little sort of boutique programs, never amounting to too much to get the attention of Congress and so forth, I think. And so you get a bunch of little sort of state agencies that were created that give you a little bit of capital money here, a little bit of interest write-down money here, a little soft second loan program that under certain circumstances gets paid back, and certain circumstances it doesn't. And so it all adds up to very little capital cost. That is, the way affordability is created is that you don't have to pay back a big mortgage on the property. So this property has a very small mortgage, and so it makes the units more affordable. In addition, some of the people who come here have portable subsidies. That is a Section 8, usually a federal subsidy that helps them pay a portion of the rent depending on income. So there's a little mix of affordability here, and there's very little capital carrying costs. There's very small mortgage. So that's the way it all works. It's difficult to put together, but the results in the end for an organization like us and for the people who live here are very, very good. You know, for many people, housing costs have gotten out of reach. You know, historically, since HAC has been in existence 35 years, housing costs have gone up about 7% a year over that period of time, whereas middle-income incomes have gone up about 4% a year, and low-income incomes have gone up about 2% a year. So what you have is housing costs going up faster than incomes. The result of that, unfortunately, is that a lot of people, particularly younger people entering the labor force, can't afford housing in the way people my generation could. And so both in terms of renting, you have to write down the cost. The cost of building a rental unit these days is probably $250,000, and the ability of people to pay is to sort of pay the cost of renting a unit that costs maybe $100,000. Not many people understand that math. It's hard to explain in a situation like this. But the fact is that for a portion of the population, you need starter housing, rental housing, for example, and sometimes first-time homebuyer starter housing to help people get their first home of their own. And we do both. That is, we've done a number of first-time homebuyer purchase developments and a number of rental developments that help people get started in their lives. On the flip side, there are some elderly that are on fixed incomes. We all are very aware of that. And so we've done some elderly developments as well, where the cost is written down so that elderly in their last years can pay a rent they can afford if they're living just on Social Security, for example, which is very common. I think that each one of the developments that we do is a learning experience. And first of all, you have the basic risk. You're acquiring a piece of land, you're paying an architect a lot of money, you're designing and building a building where you can lose money, you know, you can get into all kinds of problems with weather and so forth. So you get the basic ability to get the money from all those sources, the basic ability to build the development, and the basic ability after the fact to make it a happy place for people to live. And I think that for many development entities, the process of getting the money and building the building is all that they do. Of course, we live with the results because our goal isn't the building, it's to create a quiet enjoyment so people can have productive lives, and that's our goal. So part of what we learn is the style of the housing, the amenities of the housing, how the units are laid out in relation to each other, what the interior layout should be to best accommodate the individual household. We're not trying to create just units that market and look glitzy. We're trying to create units that really work for people. And it's a struggle. It takes a lot more thought than you would think. I oftentimes say, you know, that how can you possibly afford to build a development where there have been 1,000 meetings in preparation for building it? I mean, it's mind-numbing, it's counterintuitive. But that's what you do if you want a good result. And planning is a thing that's very important to do if you want a good result. And in America, and I'm very much an American, there's a tendency to want to get to it, to get it done, to get it out of the way, you know, to finish up the task. But there's a lot of patience and a lot of soul searching and sort of brain searching that goes on to try to create a good outcome. And so the developments we've done like this one, it's early in our development, and I think this was successful, but we're moving towards what we consider to be our signature product that we can replicate in other ways when we've had the experience of creating a real community that focuses on affordable housing for a heterogeneous population, jobs, and green behavior, and sustainable development with gardening and so forth. So all of those come into play, and it's not what a traditional developer looks at. It's what we look at because we're trying to change people's lives, not just provide housing.
Housing Assistance Corporation has helped over 100,000 people since 1974. In just 1 year, HAC conducted 339 single-family energy audits to reduce electrical use, weatherized 200 single-family homes, provided housing guidance and services to over 5,000 people, assisted 599 households with mortgage foreclosure and reverse mortgage counseling, sheltered 229 families, which included 335 children, served 547 different homeless women and men at the NOAA Center, prevented almost 500 families, including over 1,000 children, from becoming homeless, administered 935 rental subsidies for families, elders, veterans, and disabled clients, paid $8 million in rent annually to landlords, 70% of whom are local, and with the help of over 500 volunteers, served 43,800 meals.